Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Healthtech Marketing Show. I'm Adam Turinas. I'm very excited about this episode. I'm getting quite emotional. My throat's all choked up. First of all, thank you for anybody who's out there watching live. I really appreciate you doing that. Thank you to anybody who's listening to the recording. If you're watching this, you can actually subscribe to the Healthtech Marketing podcast. You can subscribe through Apple, Spotify, any of your favorite podcast shows. Just search Healthtech Marketing Show. Easy. Also, big thank you to HIMS, logo above me, for all the support you give us. You sponsored this show and a lot of the other stuff that we've done for a long time. And we're very grateful to you for that. Today's topic is one of my personal passions, and that's the buyer journey, specifically the B2B buyer journey. It's frankly fundamental to everything that we do as a company at Health Launchpad, and something that our broad community of health tech marketers is always really interested in. And we do, we try to bring as much forward as we can on that. We've had buyers on the show earlier on in the year. HIMS had published some really good research on the health tech buyer journey, and we presented that. But today's really special, actually. We get to have on the show a couple of people. I'll introduce them both in a minute. The guest speaker is Kerry Cunningham from 6 Sense. Kerry is somebody who's got just deep experience and really, truly one of the most insightful people, I think, in B2B marketing strategy, and particularly on the B2B buyer journey. And I didn't frankly know much about Kerry, and I saw him on Tim Hughes's show, I think about 6 months ago, and was really obviously intrigued about what he had to say. And the more I saw and more I learned about the research that he'd been doing, the more I sort of been really following him avidly. So I'm just so delighted to have him on the show. So let me bring our two people to the stage. I've got obviously Kerry, who's going to introduce himself in a second, and my colleague Mark Erwich. So Mark joined us recently as a principal of Health Launchpad. Mark, say a few words about yourself, and then we'll go to Kerry.
Of course, and thank you so much for inviting me. Thrilled to be here. Healthcare technology for the last 20 years or so. Worked for Nuance, worked for Imprivata and Ferrado, and recently joined Health Launchpad. And I'm just so excited to be here, and that is really because of the topic of the buyer's journey. Really critical that we have this discussion, and so excited to have Kerry on the call as well.
Excellent. Kerry, please tell us about yourself. Tell us about your journey. How did where does the passion about B2B marketing and the buyer journey come from? And then, let's hear a bit about what you're doing at 6 Sense, and then we'll get into the research and stuff.
Yeah, thank you. So it's really, really nice to be here, and great to see Mark again. We ran into each other in the early days of what I'll talk about in just a minute as a huge part of my journey. I've spent most of my adult life in B2B, a lot of it right in the heart of Silicon Valley, working with tons and tons of tech startups, trying to identify first customers and lots of early stage companies. So I've seen in that capacity hundreds and hundreds of B2B companies from the inside. Eventually ended up about 10 or 11 years ago at Serious Decisions as an analyst there. And while an analyst there, my buddy Terry Flaherty and I developed what we call the demand unit waterfall. And that was something we can talk a little bit more about that. But the essence of that was a recognition that we've been barking up the wrong tree in B2B. We've been looking for leads when what we really should be looking for are active buying groups, large groups of people who are out looking for your solution from the same organization. And so we had the good fortune to be able to tear down the existing Serious Decisions waterfall that was based on leads and build a new one. That's where we ran into Mark, because his company was one of the very first implementers of that and got a big award from us and all of that. So that was really, really great. One of my heroes to this day for that. So I was with Serious Decisions and then Forrester after that acquisition for about 8 years. And during that time, it really solidified what we had come to believe, that B2B has to be about identifying active buying groups that represent opportunities for sales, and not about identifying leads. And when we get technical about it, not really about identifying accounts, because an account represents generally multiple selling opportunities, and we really need to get down to that level to find it. So worked on that and a lot of things around it for quite a while, and then moved over to Sixth Sense at the invitation of the person who's now the CRO. And what I loved about that was getting a little closer to the action, actually having the solution, being able to hand somebody. So as an analyst, you're talking about the idea, you're encouraging people to do the right thing. You don't hand them the keys to the engine to do it. And here at Sixth Sense, what's been really fun over the last couple of years is saying, here's the thing to do it with. Here's the tool that will get the job done for you. So that's been a lot of fun. In my capacity here at Sixth Sense, I actually have the same job that I had as an analyst. So I do a lot of primary research. We'll talk about that today. And then write and present an awful lot, trying to propagate the ideas into the marketplace.
Thank you. I'm constantly impressed with the quality of the work that you guys are putting out, but also how much of it. I mean, I was going back on the resource section yesterday of Sixth Sense, and I had to scroll quite a long way down to actually go back to the research study that you published. I think it was like less than 6 months ago, maybe. I mean, it was late last year. And that's actually what I think we want to start with is I think the B2B buyer research that you did late last year, I think is one of the best pieces that's out there right now that's sort of current. And I'd love you to talk a little bit about that and share some of the really interesting key data points that came out of it.
Great. Thank you very much, first of all, for the kind words. And just a little plug. We are right now, like right before this call, writing up next year's report, or this year's report. So we've replicated the study, and I can tell you that everything that I'm about to say in terms of the numbers is fully replicated in a second edition of the study, which we ran globally. So the study that we're talking about, we call the buyer experience study, literally trying to understand what that buyer experience is. And the reason that I've wanted to do this is because I think we've largely really misunderstood the buying experience, or not understood it very well. And so last year we surveyed 936 people who'd been involved in a B2B purchase, a legitimate kind of enterprise B2B purchase. The minimum qualification for solution price was 10,000 US. Most were substantially larger than that. And so we asked about the kind of parameters of what that buying process was like. And the basic numbers are this, that the average B2B buying process involves a buying group of about 10 people. That is very consistent globally, and it's been consistent across time. The number appears to be ticking up a little bit. It's not like we're adding 5 people to the buying group, but it looks like maybe 1 has been added over the years. Now, the typical that B2B purchase was about an 11-month buying cycle, and it's really important to distinguish buying cycle from sales cycle. This is the length of time between the buyer begins thinking, okay, we need a solution to a problem or a different solution to a problem, and they start researching, to the time that they actually make the decision and make a purchase. So the numbers that I think stick out in my mind and everybody else's mind are the following: that buyers told us that they had their first interactions with sellers 70% of the way through that buying journey. Now that's a number that's very much like numbers Serious Decisions used to say. 67% of the buying journey was digital, and some other numbers that other folks have said. which is great because what that tells us is that we're talking to legit B2B buyers, the same kind of buyers that we've heard from in the past for these numbers. So buyers are talking to sellers at 70% of the way through the journey. Based on prior research, we suspected that that's what we would see. And so what we wanted to really know is, why is that? Why does it happen so late? So we asked a very simple question. When you had your first interaction with sellers, did you initiate that interaction, or did the seller initiate that interaction? Buyers say that they initiated the interaction 83% of the time in our survey last year, which is extraordinary. And I don't think this means that buyers are sitting back and they're wondering, well, why isn't anybody trying to get in touch with me? I've got a buying process, right? They're getting emails, they're getting phone calls. They simply don't respond until they're ready. And part of the proof of that was we took the other 17%, the 17% who said, nope, first interaction was because I got a call or I got an email and I just responded. And then we asked the question, when did that happen? It happened to 70% of the way through the journey. It doesn't change it at all. In this year's data, it looks like it's actually a little bit later. So in other words, if a buyer responds to you directly, it's probably because they've already made their short list. They've already picked a winner, and you're not it. And so they haven't gotten to you yet. So we'll dive into that detail in a minute. So one, we know that the first interaction between buyer and seller is very tightly controlled by the buyer. And by the way, that number is statistically equivalent this year and globally, in EMEA and APAC and in North America. Then the next question we asked was, when you had that first interaction with a seller, was that first interaction with the ultimate winner of the business, or was it with one of the other vendors that you ended up looking at? And this number was staggering. This number was 84% of the time. That first conversation is with the ultimate winner. And here, I think a little bit, we have to entertain two ideas and then dismiss one of them. So one of the ideas is that a buying team of 10 goes through 8 months of an 11-month buying journey. They have, during this time, we know, thousands of interactions, content interactions, all of that stuff, right? They reach a point 8 months into their journey where they say, all right, well, I guess it's time to go talk to some vendors. We haven't allowed that yet, but now let's go do that. But they haven't formed an opinion about which one they want to buy. And they pick one at random, and then they have a conversation. That conversation is so compelling that they buy from that vendor 84% of the time. So that's one possible explanation. But I think the real explanation is a buying group of 10 people spend 8 months pouring through thousands of pieces of content to come to a consensus as a team about what they want and who they want to buy from. And when they've gotten to that consensus, they go out into the market to validate that choice. And the last 3 months of the buying process is about validating a choice that has largely been established already. The final proof point of that is that we asked, to what extent had you established your requirements prior to talking to vendors? And buyers said that 78% of the time, they'd either completely or mostly set their requirements before talking to sellers. So that tells you they have come to a consensus as a team about what they want before they actually go out and talk to anybody. Now, I would have been out shouting these numbers from the rooftops if they had all been half of what they were. If it said half the time we've already just, it would have been crazy. But to see that the numbers be so high, and then to see them replicated. So last year our sample size was 900. We collected 2,500 more responses this year globally, and there's very, very little difference in the numbers, even in the details. Most of them are statistically equivalent to last year. So
the implication of that for marketers, I think, boils down to two things. Number one, your job, your priority should be to do two things: find and engage who happens to be in market. So that's really hard, but that's number one. And then number two is get yourself to be the first person on the list. And that's it. And it's sort of, when people ask me about what's ABM, because, you ask 20 ABM experts, you're going to get 20 different variations on a theme. I think it's really about that. It is really about, it comes down to that. It's obviously extremely hard to do, but it is, I found that insight, particularly the 84%, it's just, that is just rocks your head back.
Oh, when we saw that in the data the first time, you feel like, this was your a moment where you think, well, okay, let's check that. All right, let's check that again. All right, let's go back and redo all of the data again, make sure that we got it all right, and check it again, because it was just staggering. But every time we checked it, it came out the same. And then we ran the whole thing over again, much bigger sample size this year everywhere, and it comes out the same.
So Gary, that process before that first initial contact, I think you also call that anonymous research. Mm-hmm. What is your recommendation to for marketing organizations to really make sure that they're on the map, that they are seen, and that they're read? What's your recommendation?
Yeah. So first, especially in times when the economy isn't great, revenues are stagnant or going down. Mostly, I think stagnant. It's very tempting for organizations to cut their spend for brand and reputation marketing. I think that that's a huge mistake. So you've got to be foremost in the minds of your buyers before they go into market. That's clear. But second, you have to see every in-market opportunity. We've also done some research. Others have done research. We know that somewhere between 5 and 10% of any given set of accounts, market that you're trying to penetrate, is in market at any given time for your solution. Right? If you got 1,000 accounts that are a great target for you, 50 to 100 of those will buy something this quarter. Same number next quarter. Right? Roughly. So you take this massive addressable market, and now you're down to this. That's that's the opportunity. So it seems to me the first directive is don't ever miss any of those opportunities. Like never ever miss any of those. That's got to be number one. And then two, understand everything that you possibly can about those journeys. Because now, even if they're in that, you take that very big number, you whittle it down to the very small number that are in market. And now they're spread out across, depending upon what your sales cycle is, your buying cycle is rather, 6, 8, 10, 12 months of a buying process. Yeah. Where are they? And each one will be in a slightly different place. But when, I think the onus now is on us to understand where every one of those organizations are in their buying process. And Mark, I know that you know this, but with a demand unit waterfall back in the beginning, literally we used this language. We said, what we want is a full accounting of where every potential sales opportunity is at all times. It's literally an accounting thing. Like if we think we've got 4,000 selling opportunities in the world today, where are we against every one of those 4,000? That's what we need to know. And then and knowing that now, where are they and how do we take the appropriate actions to drive the best possible outcome?
Yeah.
Right. So to me, ultimately, that's where we're going, and is to get to that place where we have a full accounting, including what do we do next.
I just want to shift gears a bit because there's something that I think is a general B2B trend, but has certainly been a big shift in the industry that we operate in, which is health tech marketing. And that's the shift from quantity to quality. It's very, we have a network of about 150 health tech marketing leaders, and we're all constantly polling them about all kinds of different things and getting their point of view. And I think one of the biggest shifts that we've seen is, I'd say 2 years ago, there was a recognition that the sort of just measuring a quantity of leads is just not very good. It's not a good way of measuring the impact that you're having on marketing. Just sheer number of MQLs just doesn't really mean very much. And to this year, where I think there's an embracing of we need to be focused on quality. You know, how does that fit into what you guys are seeing and what's come out in some of your research?
Yeah, so you know, going back to 2017 or so, I've been saying there is no such thing as a good lead by itself. A lead is only a good lead in so much as, one, you have other evidence that there's activity coming from that account that is the same as the activity of that lead. In other words, you got somebody else from that account who's demonstrating interest. So all of the MQLs that you have, and I think this is, here's how to find the good leads that you have. Look at your leads data today. And this is totally manual. You can do it. Anybody can do it. Go look at your leads data. Let's say that you had, I'm just going to pick an easy number. You had 100 leads last month. Look at the domains from the emails of those leads and count up the unique domains. In 100 leads, you will have something like between 60 and 70 unique domains. So first realization is you never had 100 selling opportunities there, right? We look at leads as if each one is a selling opportunity. That is immediately untrue. Like, you know that that's not true right away when you look at the fact that some of those leads, you have multiples. Now, in the past, we have thought of that as duplicate leads. Like, you know, people who pay money to produce those would look at that and go, oh my God, we got duplicate leads. This is terrible. Okay, we need to flip that around. Because when you look at, let's say that it's 70 accounts, 70 unique accounts in that 30. Of those 70 unique accounts, about half will be what I call onesies. There'll be accounts where you got only one lead, right? So now you've got 70 accounts with one lead, and 70 accounts with 70 accounts. 35 of those have one lead, and the other 35 have on average 3. So what that tells you is the good leads are the ones in those 35 accounts where you have multiple leads, right? And that's where we should be spending our time to begin with. And the problem is we have literally processes and practices in place, standard operating procedures that actively suppress that signal. So one, we tend to look at multiple leads from the same account at the same time as duplicates. That's bad. You know, marketing's job is to produce more opportunities. So it's bad if we get 2 leads from the same place. We absolutely have to flip that on its head. When you see multiple leads from the same organization, what that means is there is stronger evidence that that account is actually in market for what you sell. And that's where you should be focusing your time and attention. So to me, quality leads are leads where you have other evidence. Strongest is you have multiple leads. But then, do you have anonymous traffic on your website from those same accounts? Today, globally, we can unmask, at least to the account level, half or more of those anonymous visitors. And half or more of those anonymous visitors, to put that in context, our research also shows that even from an account that buys from you, they become a customer. Out of 10 people on that buying team, only 3 of them will fill out a form, but all 10 are going to come to your website multiple times, right? So even from the accounts that buy from you, most of those people stay anonymous, and most of the signal about which ones are in market stay anonymous the entire time. So one, it's important to see the anonymous signal to understand which ones are actually in market. But after the fact, when you want to understand, like, what are the things that helped us engage that buying team, and what's the right level of engagement, you have to be looking at that de-anonymized web traffic to understand what that buying group has been doing, and what an in-market buying group, how that looks different from one that's not.
One of the members of our community, terrific CMO called Kelly McDermott, who's the CMO of telehealth company called Caregility, did a guest post, an interview with us, where she dissected the buying process from somebody who became a customer. And you could see over the period of 15 months, which is what a typical buying cycle is. Initially, 2 or 3 people sort of show up, and then suddenly then about, then they sort of disappeared, and then a few people sort of came back, and then suddenly there was a burst, and then there were about 5 to 10. And then at that point, they had a conversation. Then that's when that conversation happened. And then as they got towards the end of the, sort of like towards the end, getting into the sort of last stages of getting the deal closed, suddenly there were like 30 people hitting the website, because then it was all the people who were going to get involved in implementation, and you can just see them light up. It was it was really interesting the way that she depicted that. It's rare that you get to see it with that clarity.
Yeah, that's it. That's exactly it. That's, I think so. There are a lot of parallels between the way B2B buying happens and the way consumer buying happens. One of them is that when we know which thing we're going to buy, when it's a considered purchase, we gorge ourselves on everything about it, right? You're going to buy a new car. Okay, I know that's the one I want. Now I want to know everything and all the time, right? That's the way we are. The other way we are is, if we're shopping and we're looking for a car, or it's a big appliance or something like that, we do our research. We maybe have a short list of those things, right? 2 or 3 of them that we're looking at, but we know which one we want. And when we go kick the tires, press the buttons, do a test drive or whatever, you start with the one that you want. And you hope you don't have to do anything else, right? I mean, it's natural. It's exactly what buying teams do as well.
Yeah, very interesting.
And defining this buyer group is sorry.
Go ahead, Mark, please.
Yeah, so defining this buyer group is really important, and I think you alluded to that in multiple ways, Kerry. And I see 2 different perspectives in the market. One is where you say, well, okay, let's sit together as a marketing organization and figure it out, right? Analyzing the opportunity objects and see who's connected, talking to sales, looking at campaign members. The other perspective is, well, let's look at intent. Where is intent coming from? And not so much defining a static buyers group, but more a dynamic based on that intent, what you see.
Yeah,
I'm really interested in your perspective and what your research has shown that would help our members.
Yeah, it's a great approach. So I think of that as kind of the top down and the bottom up approach to the buying group, right? So we think it's these people, and then we go looking for those people. The difficulty I have with that approach is you only see what you're looking for. So if you've decided in advance, it's three personas that I care about, or these 4 personas, it's what you go look for. That's all you're going to see. And what if it looks different? Are you going to know? What I prefer, and there's also kind of a couple of different uses. Like you have to pick favorites among buyer personas when you're creating content. None of us have the resources to produce great content for 10 different buyer personas. Nobody's going to do that. You're going to do 2 or 3. You got to pick the ones that are most important to your decision-making process. Absolutely do that. But you have to realize that every member of the buying group, big or small, regardless of their role in the buying process, is going to come to your website and look at whatever they can, and that most of them are not going to fill out a form to do it. So, and so our friends at Path Factory, Content Intelligence, they did a bunch of great research last year, and what they're able to see, they use 6sense to see who's on your website anonymously, and they combine that with information about who filled out forms and what they looked at. And what they show is that the number of known to anonymous visitors, it's like 1 known to every 3 or 4 anonymous visitors from an account. And when you're trying to understand which account is in market, it really doesn't matter who those anonymous people are, or even who the people filled out the form are. It just matters how many of them there are and how intensively they're looking at you. And so, at the beginning of things, I'd like people to just back away from caring very much about who the people on your website are. Since we know that 7 or 8 out of 10 are not going to fill out your form, assume that the people you really want to talk to are not going to fill out your form, because they know what's going to happen if they do, right? So they're going to send somebody else to do it if you have content that they can't get to. And then so what I would recommend is don't have content that buyers can't get to if you want to influence them. So, that's the gating question. But if you have something that you're trying to influence your buyer with, and you're putting up barriers to them getting it, you got to ask yourself how much sense that makes.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you guys, Latanic Conant's book, it's like no forms, it's all about not gating.
Pretty clear on that one.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I actually wonder, is there anything gated on your website other than,
Yeah, just for events.
Yeah, just for events. Yeah. Which is where you need to edit, because you need a registration. You need to be able to send them information. So it makes sense. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So I think we have established that we want to educate this buyers group, and we typically look towards, okay, what's the buyer's journey, and what is the appropriate content that we serve, making sure that we tell this story, and we typically see that as a set of like consistent and logical steps that people go through on the prospect side. But again, like Adam said, when we start dissecting, then it sometimes is not true at all. Like that, there's weird things they're doing, step backwards. The person who was the champion has left the organization. Now somebody else is in charge. He has 20 other priorities. So how do we orchestrate that content, knowing that world is not so perfect as we all think, and as we start building that?
So I think, at base, make sure that you first of all have content that addresses all the major questions, prioritize them, do an inventory, and then fill in based on a priority level for what are the things that are most important to your buyers. If you don't know that, then finding out is what the first thing you should do, is understand what's important to them. So, and then make it all available, because you're exactly right. I mean, if you just think about your own behavior, whether it's in business or in a consumer life, your own behavior is you don't do things in an order when you go research stuff. You're going to go to the website, you're going to see whatever you see, you're going to poke around. It's going to be pretty random button pushing and mousing around. You're going to get what you get. Your decision-making process as a group is probably going to follow a pretty consistent pattern. Like first you decide, do we spend money to solve this problem? What's the business case? All of that. Now, who are the players? How do we do that? You're probably following a pretty logical progression internally as a buying group, but that won't be reflected in how you collect information, I don't think. I think how you collect information and where you get it where you get it. And you probably are going to end up going back and downloading the same PDF 5 times, or 3 different people on the team are going to do it 3 different times. It's just going to be very kind of random looking in the way the information is captured. And so I think you just got to make sure that you know what information your buyers need, make it as available, findable, consumable as possible. And then you can watch, what is being consumed and what isn't being consumed. I think that's an important thing to understand. Are there important pieces of content that a buying group that's been in market for a while should be looking at that they haven't seen yet? And there are certainly plenty of ways to know that today. So I can see that this account, this is what they've looked at anonymously. These are the people that we know, and here's what they've looked at. We've got this great buying guide that they have not looked at. Let's make sure they get it, right? Get that in front of folks. And that's a great use, I think, for BDR, SDR types as well. Rather than going out and hammering folks for meetings that they're not going to give you until they're ready, enable them. Let them know, oh, hey, we've got this great event coming up. We know that you're going to say this, but we know that your account's been all over the website and looking at everything. We've got an event, or maybe we've got an archived webinar that talked about the exact thing that you all appear to be trying to do. Just get it to them. Don't wait for them to find it.
That's great. You also had an excellent report that you released in April. It's the buyer identification benchmark, and lots of great data. And maybe you can spend a few moments on that as well. And maybe you give an angle towards some of the smaller teams. Like some of our members have a small marketing team, and like there's only so many things that you can do, and there's only so much budget that you have. So how can they like interpret this type of data, and how can do something meaningful with it?
Sure. So that report looked at, I guess, what it sounds like. So it's buyer. How do you identify your buyers? That's not the way most people think of it. So most people would think, what do you do for demand gen?
Yeah.
Right. And so we asked the questions about, do you have an account-based approach? Do you, it's like, important questions. Do you have an agreement on what your ideal customer profile is? Is that an agreement with sales? Like, so do you know that? Are you agreed on that with sales? That's actually the first step everybody ought to take. Doesn't require, or it may require technology if you've got a big addressable market, but it doesn't have to. And even if you have great technology, the really important part is aligning with sales and making sure that you're, in lockstep agreement about that. But then, do you know how big your buying groups are? Do you use third-party intent signals of any kind to see that buying process before it hits your website? If you are a small team and a small brand, that's more important to you than it is for a big team and a big brand. Mm-hmm. So I was on a call last night with one of the largest global tech brands on the planet. They shouldn't do care about third-party intent and who's out looking for the kind of solutions they offer, not on their website. But early on in the buying process, virtually every potential customer is going to come to their website. So for them, third-party intent, less important than if you're a small brand. And that is what we saw in the buyer identification study is smaller organizations tend to use more sources of signal. And by that, I mean, maybe there's third-party intent, there's review site intent, there's syndicated content. And then, so smaller organizations can and should use that even more heavily than the bigger ones, because by definition, your prospects are less likely to know about you and to find you early in their journey, and you got to see them first. If you're a small brand, then I would say find the place or the places, the publishers your buyers visit, and figure out how to get their data, right? And probably they sell it, but they probably sell it as part of something else, third-party intent. But to me, that's massively important. What we found, though, is that the popularity of third-party intent has actually dropped over the last 2 years, both in terms of its use and it's in terms of how useful marketers think it is. I'm not surprised at that. I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn, and if you ever see intent data mentioned on LinkedIn, it's either by somebody who sells it or by somebody who hates it.
Yes. Yeah.
And the people who hated it.
Yeah, part at the beginning was, this is a great intel. This is super valuable. Let's share it with sales. And sales got really frustrated because it's meaningless.
Yeah.
And I think with that, there's sort of a pushback on it, which is really unfortunate because if you dissect it well and if you leverage the data well, there's a lot of value in it.
Yeah. The thing I would say to sales about intent data is it ain't for you. It's just not for you. And marketers, it is not for sales. It is for you. Right. Now, use it, give it to sales once you have an engaged buying group and you know some of those people are and they're in market, then show them the intent data when you give them the full package so that they know how that thing came about. But don't just see a spike in intent data and hand it to a sales rep and think that something good's going to happen. It isn't. It's a very weak lead. So, I think that's what's happened. So we're fighting back uphill against that right now. I think we really need to do that. Same thing applies to anonymous traffic on the website. In fact, I wrote something a couple of years ago and called it signal substitution syndrome. I love syndromes. But signal substitution syndrome, exactly what it sounds like. We had, leads, then we substituted MQLs. From MQLs, we went to intent data, and everyone is looked at as a substitute for that last thing that everybody hated. Anonymous traffic, same thing. We tried that for a while. We gave it to the sales rep. That was bad. PLG. Oh, this was actually, that article was in response to product-led growth. Oh, that's it. These are the good leads now. No, they're not. No, they're not. They're another signal. But those signals need to be used together, not substituted for one another and used serially. And that, to me, that's kind of the big, that's the big thing that's happened over the last couple of years is all of these signals come up, they get a day in the sun, people use them the wrong way, and now they get derogated, when what we really need to be doing is saying, look, how do we package these things together to get one coherent, powerful, reliable signal? Here's where you go to find your buyer. And that's what we really want with all of that. So yeah, the buyer identification study was, I find it a little depressing to look at the data. The data says we're going in the wrong direction a little bit. Yes, that's kind of where it is. And there's a bunch of other stuff in there too, but that, for me, the big takeaways are marketers have to push back on the negativity about intent data and use it the right way.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think we're going to wrap things up in about 5 minutes. So maybe just one more question there.
Okay. Well, then let's talk about, I think for me, one of the things that I'm most passionate about, and I think at your introduction, you as well, which is measurement. And how do we measure all of this? And we talked about the demand unit waterfall a bit at the beginning. And I'm just interested in your perspective as you see the market and particularly in the context of the things that we discussed earlier. What's the right way to measure all this?
Yep. We also have a report on measurement that we haven't even promoted very much yet. For the second year in a row, it's called Doing One Thing and Measuring Another. So that'll tell you about where that one stands. What people are measuring today is what people were measuring 10, 12 years ago. They're measuring lead production and MQL production and conversion. But the reason we call it and doing something else is a lot of them are doing ABM. Here's the problem. ABM doesn't improve lead conversion. And in fact, it oftentimes goes the other direction. In fact, I did a presentation with a colleague a few years ago at Forrester called Why Your Falling Lead Conversion Rates Are a Good Thing. When you do good marketing, if you start with an agreement with sales on the accounts you're going to focus on, and you really do focus on a set of accounts, unless you're terrible at it, what's going to happen is you're going to get more leads from that smaller set of accounts. So you take the math we were doing earlier that goes 100 leads, 70 accounts, 35 where you have multiples. It's going to go 100 leads, 45 accounts, 30 of those have multiple leads and they have 4 leads each, or something like that. So that's what's going to happen. So if your process is only, and by the way, only if your processes are standard lead processes, only one of those leads from any given account is ever going to find its way onto an opportunity. So your lead conversion rate will go down, not up, right? Your opportunity production rate will go up, your revenue will go up, but you as a marketer are going to be coming to the analyst or something and saying, can you help me with my lead conversion rates? So we have to stop caring about that. What we need to care about is, and this is what the demand unit waterfall was, it was, all right, how many potential opportunities are out there? How many of those are in market at any given point in time? Of the ones that are in market, how many of those are actually actively engaging with us? So that's the top 3 stages of the waterfall. Which are in market and how many are engaged. Marketing should be measuring itself against the ratio of in market and engaging with us. Right? And our best examples of the use of the demand unit waterfall and the measurement were organizations that focused on driving up the rate at which in-market accounts engaged with them. And then when they're engaging with you, driving up the rate of engagement inside that account. And so, for instance, 6 Sense knows that if we have a mid-market account that we're trying to sell to, we've got to get at least 3 really engaged individuals from that account prior to the time we get an opportunity, or it's not going to have that good of a chance of becoming a customer. Okay. If it's an enterprise account, the number 6, right? So looking at that level of engagement allows you to say, okay, well, what happens if we do produce this level of engagement? Does that improve the selling outcomes that we want to produce later on? And the answer is going to be yes. So we got to move away from the lead-based attribution stuff. And what we need to be looking at is marketing driving engagement of the accounts we want to sell to. And when marketing does drive engagement, does more engagement lead to better outcomes? And where's the kind of magic range that we want to go to? And now marketing can be tuned and adjusted to continually drive engagement in the right set of accounts and even the right kinds of personas from those accounts.
Love it. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Excellent. I really, this is, I think I found the last 45 minutes, I've just been listening with rapt attention to the two of you talking. I've learned so much. I hate to bring this to a close, but all good things must come to an end. So, Mark, thank you for the great questions. And Kerry, thank you so much for everything that you do, and for speaking so clearly and so insightfully about these topics. Now, one last question for you, Kerry. If anybody out there wants to follow you, see the research, where's the best place to go? What should they do?
Perfect. So 6sense.com/research. And as Adam alluded to earlier, that will drop you into a big pile of research. We type fast over here.
Yes. The extraordinary thing, because you've got it's not a large team, but the amount of stuff that you're publishing is really extraordinary. So thank you for that. And then you should also follow Kerry on LinkedIn. So Kerry Cunningham, 6 Sense.
Post a lot on LinkedIn.
Yeah, absolutely. Follow him there. And so I'm going to wrap things up and thank both Kerry and Mark again for your participation today, and also thank you to HIMS for your support, and thank you to you for listening or watching. If you found this useful, if you thought this like, hey, I actually learned something today, and you think somebody else in your network might benefit from it, share it on LinkedIn or forward it to 2 or 3 people. We'll certainly be grateful to you for that, and hopefully they will be too. So with that, I want to thank everybody out there who's watching. I want to thank Mark and Kerry for today, and with that, I will bid everybody farewell.
Thank you all very much, Mark. Thank you.